Back now with our CBS News Correspondents Roundtable. Jan Crawford, what's going to happen on the court? Is Justice Ginsburg going to retire?
Well, I think we have to take her at her word. She said she's not. She's 81 years old. She recently had a stent put in, but she was, 4 or 5 days later, right back on the bench. She's an active questioner, and she's made clear that she's not going to give President Obama his third nomination. She said pretty bluntly, who would be better than me? If he got confirmed. And from a liberal perspective, I think she's right, particularly with Republicans going in to take over the Senate. So I think President Obama probably has got to be content with making 2 nominations to the Supreme Court. The interesting question is the next president. I mean, obviously, the Supreme Court is a president's most lasting legacy. I mean, they're up there for generations, affecting American law and life long after the president has left town. In the next president's first term, 4 justices will be in their 80s. So that would give the next president a real opportunity to shape the direction of the Supreme Court. President Obama didn't change the direction of the court. He replaced 2 liberals with 2 liberals. But if a conservative or liberal were to retire and the president were of a different ideology, it could turn the direction of that court, which now, of course, is 5-4 conservative.
Let's talk about Capitol Hill, Nancy Cordes. Who is going to be the leader in the Senate? Will it be Mitch McConnell or will it be Ted Cruz?
I think it will be Mitch McConnell. I mean, Ted Cruz can still make all kinds of mischief, but I think his influence has waned. I think some of his fellow Republicans feel that in 2014 he went too far a few times. In fact, just last week he had to apologize to his fellow Republicans because he tried a maneuver that ended up making them stay in town through the weekend. And members of Congress like nothing less than having to stick around here, especially at the holidays. So I think Leader McConnell, the first thing he'll do, as he has said, is put Keystone Pipeline up for a vote. It has already passed the House. It is likely to pass the Senate. And then the big question will be, does the president veto it? And then I think you'll see a series of jobs bills. Republicans want to rack up some early wins. So they'll look to pass some bills that they think can get some Democratic support as well. Things like making it easier for veterans to transition into the civilian workforce. Things like restoring the 40-hour work week threshold in Obamacare. They feel that a lot of people have been put onto part-time work because companies are trying to evade that threshold in Obamacare. And so they want to restore that. They think they can get some Democratic support for that as well.
And what about the State Department? What will be John Kerry's main priorities? What would he like to leave of his legacy, if there would be such a thing?
I don't know if I could speak for him, except for he really believes in pushing diplomacy on Middle East peace. That's going to be quite difficult until after March, when you see those Israeli elections. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been a difficult ally for this administration and a difficult ally in the peace process here. And you see the Palestinian position weakening. Mahmoud Abbas doesn't have a lot to provide to his people at this point.
Do you think there's any chance there will be an agreement on nuclear matters with Iran?
I believe that you will, by March, get a clear read on what's going to be possible. And the hope is really an extension of what we've got. This partial freeze with partial sanctions relief, is really believed to be a solid deal, as you heard the president defending earlier this morning as well.
And David, at the Pentagon.
Well, you still got 2 wars going. You got the war against ISIS in Iraq and Syria, and you've got the war against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. U.S. has flown more than 1,300 airstrikes since August against ISIS targets. And just last week, the commander of the operation there said it would take 3 more years just to get the Iraqi army up and equipped and ready to retake all of the ground that has been lost. And that's not saying anything about what goes on in Syria. That's just this Iraq.
David, let me ask you a question that I've often thought about, and maybe I don't know if I know the answer to this or not, but I'd like to get your take on it. We talk about how long it takes to train in Iraqi. In World War II, we sent kids to officer candidate school, and we had what they called 90-day wonders. 3 months, they sent them off. They spent less time than that training enlisted people. Why is it that it seems to take so long now?
The difference was, in World War II, those young men had a reason to fight for their country. And the government of Iraq has not given many of the young men in that army.
It's the best
reason-
answer. That's the best answer I've heard. John,
Presidential-
2016, what happens?
Well, it started already. I think you're going to have two debates inside both both parties. The Democrats are having a big debate in their party about the difference between effective leadership and who really speaks for the party. And the Republicans, you talked about it with McConnell and Cruz, a fight between who's going to try and get things done through the system of Washington and who speaks for the real principles of the party. What has been unanswered is what Americans want. In the last election, only 22% thought the next generation would be better than this one. That used to be the definition of the American dream.
And yet, only 37% of those people voted.
Well, there's that, and then you got the nearly 70% who say they think the economic system is tilted towards the wealthy. Those two questions, those two itches are not being scratched by the politicians, and those people are out there looking for answers, and these debate within the parties may or may not speak to those needs.
So do you think Jeb Bush is automatically the front runner?
Well, he's a front runner if you can be a front runner with 14%. I mean, there are a lot of people running. He's got the name that everybody knows. What's interesting about Jeb Bush is he's running as, even though everybody knows the name, he's running as a bomb thrower. He's saying the traditional way Republicans have run presidential campaigns are messed up. And I'm going to run a different kind of campaign. That's a really hard thing to do, but he's going to try and do it.
And Hillary Clinton is going to be the nominee of the Democrats?
If she chooses to run, she'll almost certainly be the nominee. The question for her is, what's her campaign going to be about?
All right. Prediction time. Jan Crawford.
I'm going to predict that my beloved Alabama Crimson Tide is going to beat a tough and talented Ohio State team on New Year's Day.
Well, it
and
will be
go
a lot
on to beat
easier now
our
that they
six-
don't have to play TCU.
Bob, I have to say I'm relieved, although sorry we won't be able to place a bet. But we're going to win our 16th national championship over Oregon or Florida State.
David.
The U.S. military will succeed in killing Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, but it won't make much difference.
Cracks in the coalition against ISIS, a growing frustration among our Arab allies that there's not a strategy, just a vague vision for Syria. And keep in mind, you still have at least 2 Americans being held there and 3 Americans being held in Iran. So hostages and how to handle that is going to continue to be an issue for this president.
You're going to have Republicans consider a variety of strategies to dismantle major parts of Obamacare, and then you'll probably see them pass a border security bill aimed at going after what the president did on his own on immigration.
President Obama will talk in the State of the Union and push in the early part of next year for Trade Promotion Authority as a prelude to a trade deal with 12 nations in Asia. He will incite the wrath of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and enjoy it and work with Republicans to get it done.
Republicans will rally around a governor who that will be their nominee in 2016. After complaining about a president who was only in the Senate for 1 year and had no executive experience, they're not going to do the same thing.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank you for being here. I'll be right back with some personal thoughts about leaving 2014 behind, and you all are a captive audience. You all have to stay and listen. Back to the debate.